Welcome, everyone. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and I'm super excited to be here with you for this 90-minute program. It's called Your Remarkably Flexible Brain, Using Neuroplasticity to Promote Psychological Healing. This is a free online video event with mind-body expert, New York Times bestselling author Joan Borysenko. Note that this is a 90-minute program and it includes a 30-minute live Q&A with me at the end. So be sure to make note of questions that you want to bring to me in that last 30-minute segment. This program is part of our special webinar series called The Keys to Healing Trauma, accessing your capacity to transcend personal and intergenerational traumas. That also features a free online event with Thomas Hubel. Thanks so much for joining us, and we've got a really powerful program in store for you. As we get started, I'm going to give Joan a proper introduction. Joan Borysenko is a distinguished integrative medicine pioneer and a world-renowned expert in the mind-body connection. Her work has been foundational in an international healthcare revolution that recognizes the role of meaning and the spiritual dimensions of life as an integral part of health and healing. Eloquent and inspiring in settings that range from hospitals to hospices, from theaters to conference venues, and from boardrooms to houses of worship, she is a credible bridge between faith and reason. A licensed psychologist and former instructor in medicine at the Harvard Medical School, she is the author or co-author of 16 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Minding the Body, Mending the Mind, which sold over 400,000 copies. She lives in the mountains of New Mexico with her husband, Gordon DeVeron, and their two dogs, Mitzi and Milo. And welcome to the program, Joan.
Hi, Steve. And you might see Mitzi and Milo coming around. They get very interested in webinars.
Good, especially webinars about health and healing, huh? So, which is what your programs are all about. So, good. We hope to see them here during the hour, Joan. Okay. Now, before we dive in with Joan, I want to let you know that near the end of this program, we're going to tell you about a brand new 8-week master's program that we've been working on for over a year. It features Joan Borysenko and Thomas Hubel and draws on their leading edge of research and discovery. It's groundbreaking, as you'll see. More on this later. We'll talk to you about that a little later. So now let's jump right in with Joan and get to the exciting topics that we've planned for you during the hour. So, Joan, as we get started, can you talk to me about how to self-direct your neuroplasticity and rewire old circuitry that no longer serves you?
I sure can, because it's one of my favorite topics. And before I really dive into it, I want to give you a little bit of history, because when I was studying neuroscience in medical school, we didn't know that the brain could rewire itself. We actually thought that all the neurons you were born with, that was it. That's all you got. And that they were pruned away, both with experience and with age. So it's really only in the last 15 or 20 years that we've learned some really exciting things, like the fact that the brain in different areas can actually grow new neurons. And not only that, the neurons you have got axons and dendrites, connecting cables. And those connecting cables can grow and connect to new neurons. And also the myelin sheath around the axons connecting cables can get thicker, which means that impulses can travel faster. And so what happens is we're able to not only create new circuits in our brain, but also actually minimize or even eliminate old circuits. So that really means we're not stuck in the past, and we can actually have a hand in creating a future that's different from our past. And I think that's amazingly exciting. So that's the background of a field called self-directed neuroplasticity. So let me speak to self-directed, because all the time the environment is causing us to make new neural circuits. Let's say I hate to even say this, but I had a bad traffic accident maybe 30 years ago. And what happened from that traumatic experience is that created new neural circuits in me. And for many years, I was really afraid to drive. And I have used self-directed neuroplasticity, things that I've been able to do myself that we'll talk about, to help really sweep away that old trauma neural circuit and replace it with neural circuits that are able to, like, wow, I can merge, I can change lanes again. That's maybe a small way of explanation, but believe me, not if you're a passenger in the car with me. It's a great example.
So yeah, you've had personal experience when we talk about rewiring the brain. This is actually in the first person where you're saying this is kind of how I've done it.
Oh, and in many ways, as I said, that's one small example, but a difficult relationship leaves imprints through brain wiring. And when you go into your next relationship, you don't want to transfer what happened with that person and then what happened with your parents before that person. We want to be able to be awake and present in the moment, Steve. And self-directed neuroplasticity really helps us do that. And I'm happy to jump into some of the details of it. But first, I want to give thanks to some of the giants in this field, because we're talking about it today because we're standing on the shoulders of some incredible people. People like Rick Hansen, who, for example, wrote a book called Buddha's Brain, wrote a book called Resilient. Dan Siegel, who is a child psychiatrist who talked a lot about it. And in the fields of trauma, Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk. And anybody who's interested in learning more about trauma is going to come across these fantastic people. So I want to say I'm grateful because they've all been part of my education.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's when we talk about healing trauma and neuroplasticity, there's a lot of research. There's a lot here, isn't there? This isn't
yes, it's a lot there. And Steve, I braid together 3 strands in my life, and of course in all my talks, and that is I'm a scientist by training. I've got a doctorate and a couple of postdoctoral fellowships in cell biology, psychoneuroimmunology, mind-body things. I'm also a psychologist, and also my whole life has been about waking up and studying the spiritual traditions of the ages. And for me, the coming together of modern neuroscience and ancient wisdom is the most exciting thing. And I realize I've left out one of my great teachers, who is His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And a lot of the actual real research in neuroscience comes from the fact that His Holiness likes to get together with neuroscientists and psychologists, and he's actually funded quite a bit of research in these fields. So this is what's exciting to me, when you have like this seamless fabric of the science, the psychology, and the spirituality. It's both grounded and infinitely expansive.
Yes, it is. And boy, talking about just standing on some solid ground where you bring all of those disciplines together, as that it's only in the last, I don't know whether I should call it a decade or whatever, but that medical science and cutting edge research and spirituality all are coming together in
Yeah.
a common thread to address, in this case, trauma.
Yes, and it's so exciting, isn't it? Because trauma is, it's the way that I like to think of it is it's on the earth plane, one of the things that focuses our attention. And anything that focuses our attention has a good and a bad side. When you're focused on trauma, but you don't know how to work with it, it causes no end of suffering, anxiety, depression, rumination, and really trauma, you could say, is the inability to be present. And then when you think about recovering from trauma, you're recovering the ability to be present and rewiring your nervous system. And in the process, you wake up. And that's really the potential gift of trauma. And that's why I'm so excited about this series, that we know so many more things than we used to, that all of these things make a synthesis that can free tremendous numbers of people. And hopefully, as parents, when we deal with our trauma, then our children grow up in a healthier way. And you get like a stone of healing dropped in a pond that moves out through future generations. And in a quantum way, may even move out through generations in the past.
Boy, that's a beautiful picture. I love that. So let's go down into it, because there's so much more to talk about here. So how can you strengthen the perceptions of the good within yourself? This is one of the elements here that's in play, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So I have to tell you a story. And that was the first time I learned to really strengthen perceptions of the good, was a good 30 or 35 years ago. I'd come across the work of Brother David Steindl Rast. And I was fascinated because he's both a Cistercian monk as well as a Zen teacher. And I was at a seminar that he was giving. And in teaching mindfulness, he teaches gratitude, which he calls the great fullness. And what he said then was, beautiful things happen to you all day long, but sometimes you really don't notice them very much. So he gave us really a practice that I think has been the most definitive and transformational practice about what Rick Hanson calls installing the good that I've ever learned. I think it really changed my life, Steve. So Brother David said, during the day, all kinds of little good things happen. Like this morning, for example, I was out, and I'm a gardener. So I was taking a tour of the garden and watching new flowers come out, particularly little flowers that came, wildflowers that were coming up from seeds, and I'd never seen them before. And it was such a miracle, particularly because we've had a wet spring in Santa Fe, which is a dry place. To see these flowers like filled me with so much joy. And what Brother David said is, when you have a moment like that, you see a flower, you see a friend, you see the clouds, you eat something yummy, whatever. That night before you go to bed, he said, rerun everything you felt, the actual felt sense, the sensations in your body, the emotions that came up. And what happens, he said, rerun it for about a minute. And of course, what that does is it, number one, makes you feel gratitude. That's what gratitude really is that wonderful feeling in your body that unites you with something greater, that gives you all these yummy feelings. And then he says it creates an attitude of mindfulness all day long. Because if you agree to do this one thing, just rerun something good right before bed. Doesn't take any extra time, but all day long you'll be looking for things like, oh, I know I have to do that. So that makes you mindful during the day. Now, flash forward 20, 25 years, and you've got all the neuroscience surrounding this. And my good friend and colleague, Rick Hansen, really talks about installing the good, creating new neural circuits that are looking more for what's good instead of hanging on to the bad, the difficult, the past, the old, the worries, the fears, and all of that. And so what he says is many times throughout the day, be aware, savor the good. So for example, my morning coffee, let me tell you, since I really do savor it. I savor the smell of it when I make it. I feel it deeply in my body. Mm. I savor it. When I drink it, I'm still feeling the warmth as I go down. And something as small as that, I can't tell you, it gives me such joy. And also, it sets me up all day long. I'm looking for the good. It's like not very late in the day. And I've installed 5 or 6 little good things that have happened already today. And what happens because of that is I'm rewiring. And what the research says is really just 10 to 20 seconds of hanging with a good experience installs it in your nervous system. Now, why is this important? Well, I know that you've been interested in something called the negativity bias. And I want to talk for just a moment about that because our nervous system comes pre-wired to pay attention to negativity. And of course, if you've had trauma, you see negativity everywhere because your nervous system becomes really attuned because, of course, it's a survival thing. You want to get out of Dodge if there's difficulty of some kind. So I always tell people, those of us who are here had ancestors who had a great big negativity bias. And because of that, they were not eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, and they lived in order to continue the lineage that now is us. So if our nervous system is pre-wired to notice the negative, and that's jacked up by trauma, this installation of the good, looking for the good, savoring the good, forming new neural circuits of goodness, really starts to not only balance the scales, but really create a sense of joy and goodness in life. And that's important because we all know we live in a plane of duality. You know, there's good and there is evil. There is light and there is dark. But what we want to do, I think the Buddha said there's 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. But often we pay more attention to the sorrows than the joys. What my friend Rick Hansen says, I love this. He says, you know, the good is like Teflon. It slides right off of us. But the good is like Velcro. It sticks. But it doesn't have to be that way. And what I really, really love about self-directed neuroplasticity and installing the good is it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't necessitate sitting for hours and meditating, which is a wonderful thing if you can do it. But we're talking about 10 to 20 seconds during the day, a minute as you're falling asleep. And that's really important. We're a kind of hurried and rushed culture. And if we ever want to slow down and be able to be in a state of being, We want, when we slow down, for it to feel good inside so that we're not rushing and hurrying to avoid inner pain. And installing the good really does that. It just shows us, my God, what beauty, what a wonderful world is all around me if I can just be present to it.
Absolutely. Boy, love it, Joan. And so let me just go now down into something very related. So, how about strengthening the perceptions of the good within other people and the world around us?
Now, this is really important. There's a whole new field out there called positive psychology. And I want to talk about that for a moment. You know, I just came back. This was fun, talking to a group of young accountants in their mid 20s because they work for a corporation who really cares about their personal growth, who really knows if you pay attention to how you feel and bring out the best in you, then the work you do for others is really going to flow from that centered place and everyone is going to benefit. So I think, hopefully all know that the best work comes from when we're in our best self. And that's why we have to learn how to take better care of ourselves. And that's what the field of positive psychology helps us do. So a little background on this. Right after 9/11, a couple of psychologists, you know, kind of said, there's a lot of negativity in the world, but there is a lot of virtue. And every human being has different virtues. And we all have, like, in us some wisdom, some compassion, all of these different virtuous things, leadership. And what they did was they studied all of the world's religions and cultures over time. And they identified 24 character strengths that we all have. And we can, if we approach whatever we're doing by using our character strengths, we can do a better job. And not only that, we can, like, build on our character strengths. We can form an intention. Look at somebody you admire. Like for me, I truly admire His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, because not only his kindness, his compassion, and his wisdom, but his incredible equanimity and resilience after he and his country faced a Holocaust. And I look at that and I would say to myself, I want that resilience for myself. I want to develop equanimity. And what we do in terms of that is, like, it follows right on the self-directed neuroplasticity. If I have a moment, for example, getting ready for this webinar, I couldn't get the Zoom links together and this and that. And the first impulse of my nervous system was to go, and stress out. And then I said to myself, wait, a moment for equanimity, and took a couple of breaths, did a few things so that I could show up in my best self here. What I was doing was telling my nervous system there's another way to be here, and I can draw on inner resources and develop that equanimity. So we can learn what our character strengths are. In fact, if anyone who's listening to this, you can go and Google VIA, Values in Action, viacharacterstrengths.org. And there's just a free test for 15 minutes. You see what your strengths are. And then you can, number one, really learn to use those strengths. You can broaden, develop new strengths. And here's, like, the coolest thing, Steve. I love this. You can start to spot strengths in other people. And when you spot a strength in them, you tell them, humor is one of the strengths. And so I love it when I see somebody who's a great sense of humor, and I'll tell them, wow, you have a great sense of humor. Or maybe I've recognized in them the character strength of kindness. And I'll just look at them and I'll say, you're such an incredibly kind person. And what this does is it makes everybody feel good, because the thing we need most as human beings is actually to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized, so that we feel connected to other people. It's really all about connection. And this helps people, particularly, if you've had a hard past, if there is trauma in your background, very often your nervous system reconfigures to protect you. And maybe your relationships with other people are not always the strongest. And if you start to look for the strengths and the goodness in other people and then tell them when you see those strengths, it creates connection and it increases the goodness for everybody.
No kidding. It's such a gift, too. Beautiful, Joan. Thank you. So now you have talked a little bit about this, including bringing in the Dalai Lama, but how can you use the remarkable power of gratitude more effectively?
Well, it's amazing. There's an entire research field about gratitude. It's amazing. I never thought science is going to study gratitude. You're going to be kidding. I think this kind of thing is so awesome. And of the 24 character strengths that we just talked about, gratitude is one of them. And also, it turns out when psychologists do the research, if you develop gratitude, it's the character strength with the most related to well-being. So if there's one major strength to start developing, it's gratitude. And of course, there's a lot of ways to do it. One of them is literally making lists of things that you're grateful for, journaling a little bit about why you're grateful for something. Then we talked already about David Steindl-Rast's gratitude exercise. Also, his website is a treasure. It's called gratefulness.org. He calls gratitude the gratefulness because you feel so contented. Your heart is filled. It feels like, I have goodness running over when I feel grateful for something. And so to make gratitude a sacred, a kind of like intention, like this is what I'm aiming for. I want to be grateful. Just like right now, I'm working on equanimity. For many years, I'm still working on gratitude all the time. And gratitude is highly related to the feeling of awe, which is, I don't know, that's like a world-stopping thing. That's like gratitude on steroids. It puts you in a connection. That's one of the reasons why I live in Santa Fe. The quality of the light at the magic time of sunset and sunrise, when our beautiful red earth, our mountains, they're like luminous from within. And if I'm driving, I usually have to pull over because I start to tear up. It's so great. And from a mind-body perspective, this is like literally not only medicine for the soul, but medicine for the body. It has tremendous effects on your immune system, on the balance of your hormones, on your cardiovascular system, you name it. Gratefulness and awe are so important because these are experiences of deep connection. These are the experiences that bring us into a sense of unity, whether we recognize that, consciously or not, we recognize it in an embodied way. That's why these kinds of emotions, like gratitude, like awe, like love, these are healing emotions. Healing comes from the old Anglo-Saxon word halen, which means wholeness. It's like being part of that wholeness. And gratitude is just, it's the easiest way to get into that feeling of wholeness or oneness.
Yes, and I love this thing that you brought in from David Steindl-Rast, where gratefulness, and then this exercise before we go to sleep at night, rerunning
Yes.
these felt experiences of beauty, of things that we were incredibly grateful for during the day. That's a beautiful little exercise there, isn't it?
Well, it is because it's so simple. You know, it's like, I think so many of us, we know a lot of exercises and things that we'd like to do. We know what it is that we would really like to eat. We're not always successful at all of these. And sometimes it's just hard to get them all in. But this is so easy. You're lying in bed anyhow. You know, it sure beats rerunning your anxieties or going through your to-do list.
Right. Absolutely, for sure. I love that. So, and I know now there's as well powerful rituals that you recommend immediately after waking up. Joan, what are those?
Well, you know, there's a variety of ways that people can wake up in a way that reminds them of their best self, of the oneness, of the beauty of the day, of the mystery. And of course, it's going to vary from person to person. Um, the most fun ritual, I have to say, I always teach it at my retreats and workshops. I learned from my friend Loretta LaRoche, who is a humorist. And Loretta has done 8 PBS specials, but she always says, look, when you wake up in the morning, instead of like thinking, what am I going to do with this day? Or like, oh my God, I have all these things to do. Am I going to get them done? She said, if you're lucky enough to have somebody in bed next to you, you can do it with them, or you can do it in the mirror yourself, or gosh, I could do it with one of my poodles to just look at that person and go, ta-da, I'm back. And I love that because it's such a great gratitude exercise. You're back. You know, why take this for granted? You're back for another day of life. And in many of the ancient traditions, there are morning prayers, and that's really what they are. Often, I love. There's a wonderful morning prayer in Hebrew that I just love, and it is a big thank you to the source of life, who in its infinite trust of our souls returns our soul to our body for another day of life. And that is like so cool. Another really cool thing to do, I could go on forever about this, you're eventually going to have to stop me, is Karen Drucker. Oh, she just sent me a new CD of hers called The Heart of Healing 2, straight from the post office. Karen has 22 albums of positive music, and several of them, one of them is Grateful for This Day. And it has a great beat, a great message. And it's one of these songs, it's like an earworm. And if you set up your wake-up system, whether it's on a phone or whatever, to play you that, to wake you up, immediately, there's something particularly about music that really installs very quickly in the nervous system, and it triggers emotions. So that is another wonderful morning ritual. And, we could go on from there. Of course, there's all kinds of meditation rituals. And I would say, of course, being grateful for the coffee. That's another.
I'm a coffee drinker, so I'm with you, Joan. Yeah, the smell of coffee, isn't it wonderful in the morning, first thing? The
Mhm.
aroma and just the preparation, and then if
It
we
is.
put a little bit of whatever, cream or soy milk or something in there. Okay, so my last question for you, Joan, then is, and you've been getting to this, but you may want to go deeper. I'm not sure. So, how can we focus on the positive in ways that magnetize more positivity?
Well, every time you focus on whatever you focus on magnifies itself. I think we all know this. Wherever your attention goes, the energy flows. I mean, that's the absolute rule. So if you catch yourself ruminating all the time, this is actually one of the great benefits of meditation, that it cuts down on rumination because it quiets a brain circuit called the default mode network. And the default mode network, it's kind of it's a system that goes from the front of the brain to the back of the brain. And it's often been called the quote selfing network. It's the kind of I, me, and mine, constant worries about I, me, and mine. It's where the self-critic lives. It's what really undermines our confidence. It undermines our own basic goodness. And meditation over time actually quiets activity in the default mode network. And that's really a very important thing to do. And also, when you really learn how to meditate and you're starting to just you're witnessing what your internal dialogue is about, that's powerful because you're no longer just fused with it. That is, the negativity is going on all by itself. But, as you're meditating, you learn to look. I'll give you an example. Everyone's had an example like this of noticing negativity and then learning to switch out of it. I think this is the best benefit of meditation. So here's the demonstration. Okay, I'm meditating. And I'm following my breath. Really noticing breath in, and out. And then, of course, the mind is like an organ that secretes thoughts. Maybe I start to think I wonder what time it is. I wonder how long I've been meditating. Maybe I should look because I think I have an appointment at 2:00. What if it's 1:45? But wait, I set a timer. Just relax. My pants feel tight. How come my pants feel tight? Why am I possibly gaining weight? I'm on a keto diet. You were supposed to lose weight. I wonder if it's going to affect my blood lipids, and I'm not losing any weight. I wonder if I'm doing something wrong. But wait, I'm supposed to be meditating. And it's that going back and forth, noticing all the selfing. There it is, all the self-concerned ruminations, and recognizing I don't have to pursue those thoughts. I can notice them. I can choose to come back to my center. And as we strengthen that awareness, what happens is we ruminate less and we drop more and more into that center of goodness that's there within every single person. There's an old It's an old saying by, his name is Jerry Jampolsky. He's a child psychiatrist, an elderly statesman at this point. And Jerry says, within every person, there is a light, but there's also a lampshade. And as we recognize, oh, there's my lampshade, I just ran into it. It's wonderful because we can let go and come back to that center in us, that when we're there, there's a natural sense of peace, of compassion, of joy, of kindness, of love. All of those things are not things that we need to acquire, because those are actually our own true nature. And when you stop the default mode network from ruminating, that light within you will just shine. And that's one of those places, Steve, I'll stop on this point, where ancient wisdom and modern science and psychology really come together as one. Because this is what the ancients told us in meditation. You know, you look at some of the Hindu scriptures. I love this piece of it, which says that essential self, that true nature within you, is eternal, immortal, and ancient. It can't be cut by a rock, cut by a knife, crushed by a rock, burned by a fire. It is the indestructible essence of who you are. And I think it sometimes brings people to tears to think, oh my God, it's all already in me. It is, it's all already in me. And these practices are meant to really just clear away that lampshade so that the light can shine. And of course, what trauma does is it really makes that lampshade very opaque. But on the other hand, its gift, as I keep coming back to, is that it hurts so much. It really makes you do the work to come back into that true nature. And that's the place where the joy and the love and the goodness is there eternally for all of us. And so thank you for letting me share that.
Oh gosh, Joan, beautiful. Yeah, to come into, as we started talking about trauma, and now we come over to the other side where you bring in the natural light that we are, you know, and where we remove the lampshade and really live in the fruit of conscious living. So and in oneness, which of course is what the humanities team is all about. That we are all one with the divine. That we're actually emanations of the one, which we call the divine or one mind.
Right on.
Yeah. So beautiful, Joan. Thank you. And I just want to share too. There's a lot to unpack here because we covered quite a lot of ground. So to viewers, we will be sending out a link in the morning to this webinar, and so keep an eye out because you might want to come back even if you were taking notes. There were a lot of beautiful things that we talked about here on this journey, and you can replay the webinar in the morning if you like, or in the coming weekend. So now, as I mentioned, as we were getting started, that we do have an exciting announcement that we want to make here during this program, and it's about a collaboration actually that has been in the making for over a year. And it involves Thomas Hubel, Joan Borysenko, and Humanities team, and it's an all new 8-week master's program that we're unveiling here after a year's effort. So pardon us if we're like overly excited. We've been working on this a while. And if I had a drum, I'd get my drum roll going right now. So it is called Healing the Past, Discover the Tools to Heal Personal and Collective Trauma. Okay, and I'm gonna share a screen with you so that you can see this program page that we've created. Okay, here it is. So Do you hear the drum roll? Okay. So here it is, Healing the Past. Discover the tools to heal personal and collective trauma, an 8-week online master's program with acclaimed spiritual teachers Thomas Hubel and Joan Borysenko, and an empowering new approach to transforming traumatic experiences into opportunities for growth. So don't let the past hold you back from being fully alive in the present ever again. And Joan, this is what you've been emphasizing is that like, it's almost like a log drops across a railroad track. You weren't using that metaphor, but we get stopped. You were saying we can't enjoy the present and being in gratitude and all these beautiful things you've been talked about because we're kind of stopped in our path. There are undigested things that are going on that we can call trauma, right?
Right on.
And the thing is now for me, I wanted to, as we started working on this program, I wanted to think in terms of, well, I know people that have had trauma, because I know people, for example, some young women that had sexual things happen that they didn't want to have happen when they were younger, and other, deaths, early deaths and things. And I wanted to just say, look out at other people until I sat with this and realized, wow, I have my own traumas here. For example, I have a sister. There were 7 siblings in my family, and the sister that was next in line after me, she died an early death. And there were lots of things that I experienced as I was working that through. But it's an example of trauma that can still have unresolved things. So do you want to comment on that, Joan, in terms of maybe all of us, or most of us anyway, have traumas if we'll open ourselves to that possibility?
Well, we do. And, one of the things that Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist who really, I'd say one of the world's great experts on trauma, one of the things that he tells us is that something that really traumatizes us, we get stuck in trauma time. And it's hard, something comes up, it brings up the trauma, and suddenly it's like you're right there again, right there again. You're the child whose sister has died, and you're not even conscious that that's what you're experiencing. But the emotions from back then get overlaid on what's happening now. And all of a sudden you're responding to things from a place that's very, very old and very, very maybe young in you. You're not in your best self, because the part of the brain, as Bessel says, that looks at time and that generally would tell us that was then, this is now, is offline. And so how do we bring that together so that we're able to witness and to say, oh, these feelings I'm having in my body, this felt sense, why is this happening now? And you begin to be able to learn to work with the feelings, learn to work with your body in a way that brings you back to center. And what's really fascinating to me is sometimes trauma came before you had words for it. But your body knows, but your mind and words don't know. And you don't even have to know what the source of a trauma is in terms of memory or verbally when you're just working with it from an embodied point of view. And that's a great deal of where the field of trauma is beginning to enrich itself, is understanding how to work with the body.
So I'm going to scroll down now to this. Joan and I are not going to try and read you this whole page, so we wouldn't be doing you a service. And candidly, there's not enough time. So, we're just going to scroll it, but we invite you to save the link, come back, and really spend quality time with the page in your meditation and your spiritual experience. Really scroll it, read it carefully, because there's a lot of really important information here, a lot of wisdom. And one of the things that people over this year kept coming back to us to share was, oh my gosh, now at this decision point moment, or, with this existential crisis, right? All these words that we could put to what's going on in the world, that this is really an important time to bring a Healing the Past program out, because there's so much unresolved, there's so many unresolved things that are going on in our lives. So we think that we're really focusing on something that's important. And by the way, we're a nonprofit. We're the Humanities Team is the only nonprofit in the transformational education space. So we have no shareholders. We're not trying to create the most revenue or profit. That's not our objective. Our objective is to aim at, okay, what are the big challenges here? What are the areas where we can reach an impact that can contribute to this journey into conscious evolution and creating flourishing homes and flourishing communities, a flourishing world. So that's why we've treaded in this direction here. Now, Joan, we're going to come up on here. Again, I'm just scrolling past a lot that you're going to want to come back and read. Thomas is including all of the things that you get out of the program here, with the check marks and stuff. Again, I'm not going to try and read these. And Thomas's 8 modules, which take a look at the other program that I do with Thomas, where he talks about his 8 modules. I'm going to scroll down now because I'm with Joan to her 8 modules, and we don't need to read these here, Joan, but I know you were quite excited as you were developing the concepts, the themes, the plans for your 8 modules. Are there things that you want to share here?
Yes, particularly there's a module which really is about changing your story, because I think all of us, I know all of us have a central story. And if you've been traumatized, usually that central story has got elements of trauma in it, and things from the past and negativity. And it's possible to learn how to change your story. That's a lot of the work that I do right now, is what it is to retell your story from a conscious perspective, what it is to forgive the past and yourself, and start from a different point, start to collect what are the strengths that I developed from this experience, instead of focusing on the losses. I mean, we all have to grieve the losses, but from then we need to go forward and say, well, where did it bring me to? What are the lessons that I've learned here? So many of the modules, they all have tools associated with them. That's very important to me, that in all 8 modules, there are simple things that you can learn to do. And then another favorite module is learning to work with a self-critic, because the more trauma I find in people's past, the more they criticize themselves. And in particular, when traumatic things happen to children, they tend to blame themselves, and that's wired in there big time. So I just hope people will come and join us. I know that Thomas's modules are just extraordinary. What an exquisite teacher he is. And then my modules are, well, they're all who I am. They are really a combination of science, neuroscience, psychology, and of course, spirituality, that synthesis. And Steve, I think Thomas and I really are so complementary to each other in our approaches and what people will be learning.
Yes, you are. We are so excited, and have been for a year, as we've been planning this with you, because you all are really, I'll even go so far as to say, the most esteemed people working in this area of trauma, and to bring you together, where you, as I mentioned in your bio, you were a teacher at Harvard Medical School, and Thomas is, of course, based in over in Europe. I think he splits his time between Germany and Israel, and you both are coming at it in quite different ways. But there's a beautiful synergy So the 8 modules here for Joan: the child within, calm and open, retrain your brain, quiet the self-critic, transgenerational healing, the power of story, positive psychology, relational intelligence. Now, let me just get into how this whole 8-week program works, because there are 16 modules. It's 8 weeks. So what we do is we release 2 of these modules each week, and so the first 4 weeks is Thomas with 2 of his modules each week, and during his 4 weeks he is coming in twice to do live mentoring, and then when Joan's program starts for her 4 weeks, we're releasing 2 of her modules each week, and she comes in twice to do the live mentoring. And so this is the first time that we've done a program where they're each coming in twice to do live mentoring. Candidly, in our surveys, as we talk to people that go through our transformational education programs, one of the things that is most talked about, that's most appreciated, is the live mentoring, where they have the opportunity to come on camera. Right now, we're using something called Zoom Webinar, so you can see Joan and me. We can't see you. In the mentoring, we're in Zoom program. So now you're coming on screen. Joan is looking at you as you're saying, "Gee, Joan, I don't get this," or "I want to comment on this," or so there's some live exchange back and forth. So there are 2 one-hour programs with Joan during this, and 2 one-hour programs with Thomas. And these are live programs. So we encourage you not to be shy and bring the thoughts and questions that you have about these really powerful modules in. Now, there are other things. There's this a private Facebook community, so there's a lot of discussion between people in the program, MP3 audios. Now, there are also bonuses, and let me just describe these, because some might say we go a little overboard with the bonuses, but candidly, the bonuses help to lay a foundation, a rich foundation for the 8-week program, which is maybe why we go a little overboard. So this first bonus category is called spiritual health, and it's for early registration. So where you register by July 2nd, you receive these bonuses. So there are 3 bonus categories. The first bonus is 4 videos from Thomas Hubel. 1 on how spiritual band-aids fail us. 2, the nervous system is the messenger of the law. Then how to listen to our inner guidance. And the 4th one, staying centered in a tech-driven world. The second bonus then is a 60-minute audio seminar with Joan Borysenko, where she's talking about the role of meaning and spirituality as an integral part of health and healing. And then the third bonus here is a 30-minute video with Thomas Hubel, where he's talking about escaping the gravity of our karmic conditioning and get free of habitual patterns that keep us from being fully present. So that's the first bonus. Now, the other bonus is event-only bonus, so it's for you here now. And this bonus is for people that register by midnight tomorrow. So if you register by midnight tomorrow, then this bonus kicks in. It's an event-only bonus, and it just helps us know how many people are coming on board so we can prepare the program a little better, so which is why we created this bonus. Now, here again, there are 3 bonuses, and the first one is healing meditations. Okay, and these are by Thomas Hubel and Joan Borysenko. The first meditation is exploring the dimensions of space, listening, and presence, a 30-minute meditation by Thomas Hubel. Then tuning into your body, mind, and emotions, a 30-minute meditation by Thomas. Then being part of the moving universe, a 20-minute meditation by Thomas. Then expanding our circle, a 20-minute meditation by Thomas. And then the egg of light, and this is a 15-minute meditation by Joan. Bonus number 2 is a 60-minute audio on healthy practices for optimal and mental emotional states. And then bonus 3, this is really cool. It's a 10-page PDF from one of Joan's books. It's not the end of the world, she says. When things happen to us, how to sort of move through trauma that happens to us so we can bounce back from acute trauma type conditions. So that's a really cool thing. So those are the 6 bonus categories. This is, by the way, I wanted to say when we were announcing this, we're really proud of this price. Again, we're a nonprofit humanities team. This is $297 for the 8 video modules from Thomas, the 8 video modules from Joan, the 4 live 60-minute mentoring programs, the 16 MP3 audios, the exclusive private Facebook community, and then all of these bonuses. So you can see the ascribed value, and it's $297. So all of us, Joan, Thomas, Humanities team, are real pleased to be offering you this rich package at a time when healing the past is maybe is so incredibly important. So this decision point moment on the earth. So we're real excited about it. I hope you're as excited as we are, and Joan and I definitely look forward to being with you all in the program that starts here fairly shortly. So Joan, do you have any final things that you want to share during this program? I'm going to be coming back to do a Q&A with you all. Joan won't be coming back for that 30-minute Q&A. So, but Joan, what kind of blessing or call to action do you have for us here?
I just want to say this is an incredible program. I've been I've been part of many trauma programs. I've listened to many of them, but I've never seen one like this, which really melds the psychological, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual. So I would really say it's a totally unique program. And I think that it's the kind of program that can really make an enormous difference in somebody's life. And it's also the kind of program that would be great if you give it to somebody as a gift. What a wonderful gift. Because it's like the gift that keeps on giving in a great way, those ripples I talked about in the beginning. When one of us heals our trauma, the ripples go out endlessly through space and time. So thanks for listening. And Steve, thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, oh gosh, Joan, our total privilege and pleasure. We're so excited about it. And it's funny you mentioned gift. I was just with my best friend who lives out in the San Francisco Bay Area. I live in Boulder, Colorado now, and I got back actually fairly late last night. And yesterday when I was with him out in the San Francisco Bay Area, I said, I'm giving you a gift, Tom. And it's this program. So because
Cool.
I think it is such a wonderful gift. So boy, I mean, you and I hadn't talked about that. So I want to invite you all to come back and spend quality time. We were just scrolling and scrolling without covering really important points and details here. So come back to the page if it's something that interests you at all. See if it resonates. See if you get an inner yes to participate in this program. I know Joan, Thomas, and I would love to have you with us when this program launches, and mostly because we think it can, for many of us, including those of us in humanities team, including myself, it can just benefit us greatly, a program that's being offered at this time in the Earth's evolution and humanities evolution. Okay, so thank you so much for being with us. Joan, thank you. What a fabulous hour here that we spent together. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.